You know that moment when your entire world crumbles while you're surrounded by people celebrating what should be the happiest time of your life? When you discover betrayal in the middle of joy, and you have to keep smiling while your heart breaks into 1,000 pieces? Well, let me tell you about the day my baby shower became the day I learned exactly who my husband really was. Picture this: 38 weeks pregnant with our first child, glowing in that ethereal way everyone talks about, surrounded by friends and family in our beautifully decorated living room. Pink and gold balloons everywhere, streamers cascading from the ceiling like waterfalls of celebration, and a three-tiered cake that cost more than most people's monthly grocery budget. The gift table looked like a small mountain of love and anticipation. Wrapped packages in soft pastels stacked so high they threatened to topple over. I'd spent weeks planning every detail of this shower. The menu featured all my favorite pregnancy-safe foods, from cucumber sandwiches to sparkling apple cider served in champagne flutes. My mother had driven in from 3 states away. My college roommates had coordinated their schedules, and even David's usually distant sister had made the effort to attend. I was wearing the flowing maternity dress David had picked out specifically for this day, the one he said made me look like a goddess carrying precious cargo. My mother was taking pictures with the vintage camera she'd used for my own baby photos. My sister was organizing games with military precision, and everyone kept telling me how lucky I was to have such a devoted husband. David was playing the perfect father-to-be, charming our guests with stories about assembling the crib at midnight and practicing diaper changes on our confused cat. He was talking about midnight feedings and diaper duty with that boyish grin that had made me fall in love with him 5 years earlier, the same smile that had convinced me to say yes when he proposed on a beach in Maui. The house was filled with laughter, the kind of warm, genuine joy that only comes from people who truly love you celebrating your happiness. My grandmother was holding court in the corner, telling embarrassing stories about my childhood to anyone who would listen. David's mother was already planning weekly babysitting schedules, and my best friend was taking notes on everything for when her own turn came. Everything was perfect, until I noticed him stepping away every few minutes, always with his phone in hand. At first, I thought it was work. David was always getting important calls, something that came with his position as a senior account manager. But then I saw him smile at his screen in a way I hadn't seen in months. Not the polite smile he gave our guests, but something private, intimate, secretive. That's when I realized my husband was texting another woman at our baby shower. And that's when everything changed. The thing about being heavily pregnant is that people underestimate you. They see the belly, the careful movements, the way you have to hold onto furniture when you stand up, the need to sit down frequently, and they assume you're not paying attention to anything else. They think your brain has been replaced by baby thoughts and nursery planning. They're wrong. I'd been watching David for weeks, actually. The signs had been accumulating like storm clouds on a clear horizon. The late nights at the office that started right around my second trimester, always with vague explanations about big projects and demanding clients. The way he'd become protective of his phone, taking it to the bathroom, sleeping with it face down on the nightstand, angling the screen away from me when we were watching television together. How he'd started working out again after years of complaints about not having time for the gym, suddenly finding energy for early morning runs and weekend sessions with a personal trainer he'd never mentioned hiring. The new cologne that appeared on his dresser, the subtle changes to his wardrobe, the way he'd started humming songs I'd never heard him play. But today, at our baby shower, surrounded by 40 of our closest friends and family members celebrating our daughter's impending arrival, he wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. Every time someone was distracted by gift opening or cake cutting, he'd slip his phone out and start typing with the kind of focused intensity he used to reserve for me. I excused myself to use the bathroom, pregnancy bladder privileges that no one questioned, but instead I positioned myself in the hallway, where I could see him clearly through the living room archway. That's when I watched my husband of 3 years text another woman while our guests celebrated our unborn daughter, while my grandmother shared stories about my own baby shower 32 years ago. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow, stealing my breath and making my knees weak in a way that had nothing to do with pregnancy. But here's the thing about being 8 months pregnant at your own baby shower. You can't exactly make a scene. You can't scream, cry, or confront your cheating husband in front of your grandmother and his coworkers and the women from your prenatal yoga class. You have to smile, accept congratulations, and pretend your world isn't imploding while opening gifts for a baby whose father is already betraying her family. So I did what any intelligent woman would do. I started paying very close attention. And what I discovered over the next 2 hours would change everything. Not just about my marriage, but about my future and my daughter's inheritance. Because while David thought I was just another grateful wife opening baby gifts, I was actually planning his destruction. You see, there's something about being betrayed at your most vulnerable moment that crystallizes your thinking. While everyone else was cooing over tiny onesies and debating whether the nursery needed more stuffed animals, I was conducting my own private investigation with the focus of a detective solving the crime of the century. I started by observing patterns. Every time David stepped away to text, I timed it, usually 3 to 5 minutes, always when attention was focused elsewhere. Every time he smiled at his phone, I noted who was around and what was happening. What I discovered was that he was most active during the gift opening portion, when everyone's attention was focused on me and the presents, when cameras were clicking and voices were raised in excitement. The timing wasn't coincidental. David had always been strategic, always calculating. He knew exactly when he could slip away unnoticed, when he could indulge in his secret communication while maintaining the facade of the devoted husband. During a particularly long stretch of unwrapping baby bottles and receiving blankets, while my mother read the cards aloud and my sister carefully folded the wrapping paper for reuse, I caught something that made my blood run cold. David wasn't just texting. He was sharing photos. I saw him angle his phone toward me, toward the gifts, toward the beautiful nursery setup my mother had spent hours arranging with fresh flowers and hand-painted signs. He was giving someone else a front row seat to our private family celebration. Every precious moment, every family tradition, every intimate detail of our baby shower was being transmitted in real time to his affair partner, like some sick form of entertainment. That's when the pieces clicked into place with devastating clarity. The mysterious woman wasn't just getting updates about his day, she was getting real-time documentation of our most intimate moments. Our baby shower, the celebration of our first child, had become a voyeuristic experience for his girlfriend. But here's what David didn't know about his pregnant wife. I wasn't just any expectant mother. I was a trust fund baby with a law degree who'd been managing my family's investments since college. I'd graduated summa cum laude from Columbia Law, spent 2 years at a top-tier firm before my family's wealth made working optional rather than necessary. And I'd been thinking about updating my will anyway, given the pregnancy. The beautiful thing about being underestimated is that people don't see you coming. While David was busy documenting our baby shower for his girlfriend, I was quietly planning to remove him from every aspect of our daughter's future. Some would call it pregnancy hormones. I called it protective instincts kicking in. The rest of the baby shower became the performance of a lifetime. I smiled, laughed, and gushed over every gift while internally cataloging every betrayal like evidence in a court case. When my aunt gave us the antique rocking chair that had been in our family for 4 generations, carefully restored and reupholstered in soft yellow fabric, I watched David photograph it for his girlfriend. When my best friend presented the custom-made mobile she'd spent months creating by hand with tiny elephants and stars that played my favorite lullaby, he documented that too. But the moment that truly broke my heart was when we opened the gift from David's parents, a beautiful first edition children's book collection that his grandmother had started for her future great-grandchildren. Books like Goodnight Moon and Where the Wild Things Are, in pristine condition, some of them worth hundreds of dollars, all of them priceless for their sentimental value. As I held those precious books, thinking about reading them to our daughter in that same rocking chair, David was busy sharing the moment with another woman. I realized then that nothing was sacred to him. Our marriage, our baby, our family's love and generosity, it was all just content for his secret relationship. Every gift, every gesture of love, every family tradition was being commodified and shared with someone who had no right to these intimate moments. The violation felt deeper than simple infidelity. This wasn't just about him sleeping with another woman. This was about him inviting her into the most sacred spaces of our family life, making her a silent participant in moments that should have been ours alone. So I made a decision. If David wanted to document everything, I'd give him something worth documenting. I started talking about our future plans, how grateful I was for his support, how excited I was to be raising our daughter together. I spoke about the college fund we'd set up, the life insurance policies we'd discussed, the beautiful nursery he'd helped design, the family traditions we'd continue. Every word was calculated. Every smile was strategic. Because while David was sharing our present with his girlfriend, I was busy planning a future that would no longer include him. The guests began leaving around 4 o'clock, each one stopping to hug us and congratulate us on our beautiful life together. David played the devoted husband perfectly, his arm around my shoulders as we waved goodbye to the last of our friends. The moment the door closed, his phone was back out, and that's when I knew exactly what I had to do. That evening, while David went for what he called a celebratory dinner with the guys, which I now knew meant meeting his girlfriend, I sat surrounded by beautiful baby gifts and made 3 phone calls that would change everything. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was planning his downfall while surrounded by symbols of the life he was destroying. Tiny clothes, soft blankets, stuffed animals that would comfort our daughter long after her father's betrayal had been exposed and dealt with. The first call was to my attorney, Patricia Chen, who'd handled my family's legal affairs for over a decade. "I need to update my will immediately," I told her, "and I need to discuss some other legal matters regarding my marriage." Patricia had drafted my original will when I'd gotten married, which left everything to David and any future children. That was about to change dramatically. "How quickly can we arrange a meeting?" I asked, already knowing that Patricia's loyalty to my family meant she'd make time regardless of her schedule. The second call was to my financial advisor, Margaret Rodriguez. "I want to move my assets into a trust that protects them from any potential divorce proceedings," I explained. "And I want to set up a separate college fund that only I control." Margaret had been waiting for this call, actually. She'd never liked David, thought he was too interested in my family's money and not interested enough in building his own career. "We can have the paperwork ready by tomorrow," she assured me. The third call was to my private investigator, someone I'd used for business due diligence in the past. "I need documentation of an extramarital affair," I said simply, complete with photos, communications, and a timeline. By the time David returned home that night, smelling like perfume that wasn't mine and claiming he'd had a few too many beers with the guys, I had already set in motion the complete restructuring of our financial future. He kissed my forehead, asked how I was feeling, and told me he loved me. I smiled and said, I loved him too. It was the last lie I would ever tell him. 3 weeks later, I went into labor. David rushed around the hospital like the devoted father-to-be, holding my hand through contractions, calling our families with updates, posting carefully curated photos on social media about the most important day of our lives. What he didn't know was that while I was in labor, my private investigator was gathering the final pieces of evidence. Photos of David meeting another woman at hotels, restaurant receipts from dates during my pregnancy, text message records that painted a clear picture of a months-long affair that had continued even as I prepared to give birth to his child. Our daughter, Emma, was born at 3:47 a.m. on a Tuesday. She was perfect. 10 fingers, 10 toes, and her father's eyes. As I held her for the first time, I felt something I'd never experienced before. A love so fierce it could move mountains, and a protective instinct so strong it could destroy anyone who threatened her future. David cried when he held her, real tears, genuine emotion that almost made me believe he was capable of change. For a moment, I almost wavered, almost believed that becoming a father might transform him into the man I'd thought I'd married. Then his phone buzzed with a text, and I watched him glance at it, even while holding our newborn daughter. That moment crystallized everything. Our daughter was less than an hour old, and he was already prioritizing his affair over this sacred moment. Some people never change, and some people aren't worth the effort. That's when I knew I'd made the right choice. 2 days after we brought Emma home, while David was at work supposedly handling the backlog from his time off, Patricia came to the house with the final documents. My updated will left everything to Emma in a trust that David could never access. If anything happened to me, my sister would be Emma's guardian, not David. But the real surprise came when Patricia handed me the divorce papers she'd prepared. "When you're ready," she said simply. I wasn't ready yet, but I would be soon. 6 months later, I served David with divorce papers on a Thursday morning. He was getting ready for work, adjusting his tie in our bedroom mirror, humming that same unfamiliar tune I'd noticed him singing for months, when I walked in with the documents and a USB drive containing all the evidence my investigator had collected. "What's this?" he asked, still not understanding what he was looking at, his reflection frozen in the mirror as he processed the papers in his hands. "Your choices have consequences," I said simply, "and these are yours." I watched him go through the 5 stages of grief in real time, his face cycling through emotions like a broken kaleidoscope. Denial. "This is a mistake, right? We can work through this. People have rough patches." Anger. "You can't take Emma away from me. I'm her father." Bargaining. "I'll end it. I'll do anything. Please don't do this. We can go to therapy, take a vacation, start over." Depression. The moment he realized I documented everything and discovered that his affair partner was married too. And finally, acceptance. When he understood that I'd been planning this since the baby shower, that every smile and conversation had been calculated. "You knew at the shower?" he whispered, sinking onto the edge of our bed like a deflated balloon. "I knew you were texting her. I knew you were sharing our private moments with another woman. I knew you were documenting our daughter's celebration for your girlfriend's entertainment." I kept my voice calm, matter of fact, the same tone I'd used in law school during mock trials. What I didn't know was how far you were willing to go to betray your family. The divorce was swift and decisive. Thanks to my preparation, my careful documentation, and my family's legal resources, David got supervised visitation with Emma and nothing else. No spousal support, no claim to my trust fund, no access to Emma's inheritance. The prenup I'd insisted on before our marriage, the one he'd signed without reading carefully, protected everything that mattered. Today, Emma is 2 years old. She's brilliant, beautiful, and completely protected from her father's poor choices. She has his eyes, but my determination, his charm, but my principles. I never remarried, but I built something better. A life based on truth instead of lies, security instead of betrayal, genuine love instead of performed affection. David sends birthday cards and Christmas presents, trying to maintain some connection with the daughter he sees every other weekend under court supervision. I let him because Emma deserves to know her father, even if she'll never depend on him for her security or her future. Sometimes people ask if I regret being so harsh,
If I think I should have tried harder to save our marriage, my answer is always the same. I caught him texting another woman at our baby shower. Everything that happened after that was just protecting my daughter's future. And that's a decision I'll never regret.
If this story shocked you, just wait for what's next. Leave a comment, share it with someone who needs to hear this, and of course, subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss a single notification.